everybody, and welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, broadcasting live from Canmore, Alberta. I'm Molly Herford. I'm the author of a bunch of books on kind of all different types of cycling and things relating to cycling, and also write about all kinds of different outdoor and fitness-related activities, and occasionally teach the odd yoga class, help coach the odd clinic, and a bunch of other stuff in between.
And I'm Peter Glassford. I'm Molly's co-host and also a registered kinesiologist and endurance coach.
Cool. So, what have we been up to this week?
Well, we just ran. That was my one weekly run. I don't know if that's
good job.
Evidence supported, but that's about what it ends up being.
So far, so good. We did a solid run there. We hit some of the cool little side trails in Canmore, which is, if you know Banff or, familiar with the Banff Film Festival, it's about 15 miles south of there and still very much in the mountains. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful area. We were out here last year for Canadian Mountain Bike Nationals. That's why we're out here again. So we're super psyched to finally be here, though. It was a week-long process getting here, but it's been good. We did, a pretty casual drive out, I'll say, for us.
Well, I suppose it was casual. I mean, we had to do a fairly large mountain bike clinic in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, which went very well. But as with any larger event, especially when you're driving across the country to a new area, it's a little hectic, but people were amazing. And if you ever get a chance to ride at Buffalo Pound Provincial Park in Saskatchewan, it's just north of Moose Jaw, and also Banff is north of here, just for reference.
I said that.
I'm pretty sure you said south, but we'll leave that to the listeners.
I said Canmore was south.
You can tweet at us and let us know who's right in this. But in any case, it went well. But we enjoyed it. We were able to visit some friends. We were driving 7 or 8 hours a day, and then we sort of dropped into a couple of different friends' cottages or homes or whatever, and invaded, and then left promptly in the morning to start driving again. Yeah,
jumped in Lake Superior. Went for a few runs. Peter checked out some mountain bike trails in Winnipeg. I ran. So it's been a pretty good, very consummate athlete-y trip. I've been back on my mountain bike a fair bit, obviously, for the clinic, but starting to get ramped up on my running since the 50K mountain run is about a month and a half out now. So starting to get a little bit nervous about that. I think I'm actually going to jump into Canmore has a local trail run that they do once a month on Wednesday nights. So tomorrow night I'll be jumping into that just to sort of shake out my legs and see where I'm at with mountain running. So speaking of running, today on the podcast we have Jeff Knight, and I'm really stoked on having him on. He's a lead exercise scientist for Under Armour, and he really works to improve health and fitness through smarter exercise and technology. So if you guys have seen me reviewing some of Under Armour's smart shoes, like the recently released Hover, he is one of the guys behind it. Super cool technology, and I really like with those shoes, the point is almost that you can run without your phone and still have your runs recorded.
Why does it record in the shoe?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It also does stuff like checking your recovery through like a jump test you can do that syncs up to the app. So lots of cool stuff with that. But Jeff was also a really serious running coach before he landed at Under Armour. So instead of just talking about, smart tech this, smart tech that, we really get into kind of how to get into running, especially a little bit later in life. Some people come to running because they raced cross country in school or, ran on the track, but I was one of those runners that didn't get into it till I was in my 20s. So it's pretty cool talking to him about how to get into it and how to do you start with a 90-minute run, or how do you start? Yeah, definitely start with like 2 hours at least. I feel like that was a huge slam on me out of nowhere.
You seem to normally pull it off. I feel like you're pulling it off less as you're aging, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm getting a look for that one, but
listeners, I feel like we should just be tweeting really angry things at my older co-host here.
Oh, I'm definitely not absorbing that, but I assume, was it a run walk, or what are we going to hear about?
All different kinds of things.
Okay. There's lots of ways to ease in.
Very
good. What did you find with the shoes?
I really like them. I think they're cool. I mean, for me, they're a little bit too much shoe as someone who's been running in minimal shoes
padded, yeah.
for, a lot of
The
years.
jump test is really interesting.
Yeah, like I enjoyed testing them. I sort of almost wish that I wore beefier shoes in order to kind of get the most out of the actual, like, how they are as running shoes. But I'm just not a really, like, heavy shoe runner or big shoe runner. But they're great for, like, walking and stuff. Now that's more what I use them for, since obviously when I run I use more minimal shoes. I actually just got a pair of Ultra trail runners that I'm gonna start testing out a little bit, because they're 0 drop but still have a pretty hefty sole on them, so it's kind of the best of both worlds for the trail. I think a little bit more padding, but still kind of the same vibe as the barefoot shoes that I've been running in for the past 7 years.
Got it.
For the record, I recover swimmingly from 2-hour runs. Just putting it out there.
Okay.
All right. Let's get into the podcast. Oh, and Jeff also lives in Austin, Texas. So we talk a lot about tacos and margaritas. Apologies if this episode makes you guys hungry. Enjoy it.
So I started running like a lot of people sort of as a kid. Like my mom was into running. She ran track in college. And I think I had my first running experience as probably like 8 or 9 years old that I can remember. And it was running a local 5K in the small town I grew up in. And that is like the most vivid memory to me. And I was blown away because my mom ran the 5K and then turned around and ran the 10K. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, how do you even do that? And, so, and just, like I liked playing tag as a kid. I liked all those running games. It was like my favorite. And as an elementary school kid, like field day, I loved the running events. And so, of course, went to middle school and high school and ran track and cross country through all that, and graduated high school and was, not quite good enough to run at like that next level. Mm-hmm. And so I stayed close to running as many people do, as sort of like, I use the term, it's a term of endearment, but recreationally, because it came second to my studies and it came second to work and all that stuff as a college student, and ran a half marathon as a college student and a marathon as a college student. I was like, wow, this is like really awesome and a lot of fun. And, went off to grad school to do things outside of running, but just never could really like let it go. And, was having sort of a crisis moment as a grad student in biochemistry, and was like, I don't know, like I like biochemistry, but bacteria, they're just not that exciting. I like engaging and interacting with people. And so I had a chance encounter with a local running coach here in Austin that was also a coach at UT. His name's Steve Sisson. And, I shot him an email one day sort of in the dark or just out of the blue. I was like, hey, here's my background. I love running. I love, science. I'm starting to go to grad school for exercise science, where I'm going to, study running and run performance. And I'd love to get some experience with like coaching, and so kind of got into the rest from there. I've been doing running at some professional level ever since.
That's so cool. I have to ask, when you were in elementary school, were you like that kid that was so excited for the mile run in gym class?
It was absolutely true. So we had a grass field. We would run laps around and get a popsicle stick for every lap that you ran. And you had to get 4 popsicle sticks before you could go do like the other gym stuff. And I'd be like, yeah, like I'm loving this. Like, give me some more popsicle sticks.
Ugh, we would not have gotten along in elementary school. I will tell you that. We always have people on the show that are like, oh yeah, like I was like every other kid. I was really into sports. And I'm like, yeah, I was the kid sitting behind the couch trying to read a book. So I don't really understand that, but I respect it.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I am like a wannabe book person, and like I'm like a wannabe in a lot of ways. One of them is also a morning person. I'm like, wish I was a morning person.
Oh
I'm
my
just
God,
not.
me too. Ugh.
But books is one of those. So I like try really, really hard to read books. And I've read a few over the years, but I'm not that bookworm that I wish I were.
Oh my God, I was the kid that had to get banned from reading on the playground because I was so inactive. They're like, you can't bring books to recess. You need to actually move around. I snuck books out to recess at that point, just found hiding spots, but
Hey, I'm just gonna go play over here behind the tree, and you'll see me in 30 minutes.
We're playing hide and seek. I'm just really good at it. Okay, so out of everyone you've coached, which do you enjoy coaching more, recreational or like the high level athletes? What's more interesting?
That's a really good question. And, when I started coaching, I was like performance minded. I was like, oh man, I want to work with the tops and I want to help them kind of tweak all the little nerdy things that you can tweak. So I'm really into performance nutrition and performance hydration. Mm-hmm. And I did that for a while, and then, was afforded some other opportunities to work with a local nonprofit that did after school run programs for underserved youth. And that was really cool. And then I had a chance to work at high school and middle school as a coach. And that was really cool. But ultimately, like, the thing that I loved the most was working with those adult athletes that were professional in something other than running. Mm-hmm. And the reason is, these were adults that were willing to pay for running, which, at a surface is like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I can get paid and keep the lights on and feed my family and stuff like that. But it's actually like deeper than that. It's people that are that love the sport so much and want to do the sport so badly, do it to a certain level that they're willing to like sacrifice hard-earned money for that. And like, they're professional as attorneys, as baristas, as whatever, and they take time away from other things that they could do in their lives. And as somebody with small kids I know how hard that sacrifice is. And it was just so incredible to work with people that wanted to do it. And, and at the other, so that just is just so special to like want people to do it so bad. Because at a high school and middle school level, you're kind of twisting some arms sometimes. You're like, yeah, you're going to really like this. But at the adult level, it's like the people that care and they want to be there because it's making their life better. And they see running as this opportunity to enhance their life versus, this something that they have to do because it's a job or a gym credit or something like that.
Oh man, I've never thought about it that way, but wow, I've poured a lot of money into this. I must be a really good person.
Well, it's one of these things, and I used to have these crazy conversations, and whether it was as vice president in some company or whoever, it would be like the time question would always come up, and ultimately like you'd find a way because they just got so much value out of it. And in return, I got a ton of value out of working with them. And especially as an adult, like it's so hard to find opportunities to connect with other adults in a way like this. And coaching was just so special in that sense because you got to connect with people at a really kind of like personal level. I'm sure like, there's other jobs out there that have those special opportunities like counselors and stuff like that. But for me, this was my way to connect with people in a really special way.
Yeah, absolutely. I genuinely don't understand how people make friends as adults if they're not involved in some kind of like endurance sport or team sport activity. It boggles my mind, right? Like, where do you meet people?
And that was the other side of it is, we did, where I worked, we did like team kind of models where, it was modeled after a sort of collegiate or a high school team. Mm-hmm. And so these people that were running together and waking up at 5 a.m. to go do these workouts, they really bonded in a way. And we built relationships in just incredible ways. And that's just super special and one thing that you only get out of the sport at that level.
Yeah, for sure. So what did your PostGrad studies look like when you did go for the science of running?
So I kind of spent my time hanging out at a performance lab at University of Texas, Austin, run by a guy named Ed Coyle. And, I kind of had like 1 foot in the lab, but then I also had 1 foot out on the track because at that point in time, I was really focused on going into collegiate coaching or something at that level. Mm-hmm. And so, we spent time in the lab doing, basic science research around concepts like, how your heart rate continues to drift up during exercise, even though the intensity might be more or less the same, and what happens when you experience that under heat stress or cold stress or whatever. But at the same time, I was constantly out on the side of the track at UT or wherever, working with those other teams as a volunteer.
Mm-hmm. So did one influence the other? Like, were you coming back in the lab and saying things like, oh, hey, I saw this actually taking place in real life, or vice versa?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, living in Austin for a while teaches you a lot about training in the heat and training in the humidity. And so it was constantly bringing those kind of like understandings of what happens in the lab under heat stress out to, the track and the roads to manage, training stress and understand training stress appropriately, and, what's happening under these conditions of working out in the hot sun, and going, okay, like we see this in the lab and maybe this looks okay, or this might not be expected, but it oftentimes kind of tied back to something more practical, like the hydration aspect of it, and getting that right so that athletes can perform really well under those conditions.
It seems to me like heat stress is sort of like the sexy new topic. I don't know. I've been reading a ton about it lately. It's like heavily featured in that book Roar by Stacey Sims and Endure by Alex Hutchinson. It's like the new cool topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important, especially if it comes down to, if you have an event that's going to happen in the heat. So at some levels that could be the Summer Olympics, or at other levels it could be, poor timing at the Chicago Marathon or something like that. And you see that when people do work out in the heat and under those heat stress conditions, that they perform a little bit better at those heat events than others that don't have that type of exposure. So we saw it as a real advantage when we were building up for these heat events, whether it was with recreational athletes or not. So even the recreational athletes, we would do stuff, during build-ups to marathons, where we would do long, hard workouts in the middle of the day on a Saturday when we knew the weather was going to be up into the 90s, just in case race day was a little warmer than anticipated, so that we could perform well, because you spend so much time and energy training for these one events that you want them to go as best they can.
That's awesome. So other than just training in the heat, though, any other tips for dealing with the heat for runners? I mean, I know we still have a few months till that hits us, especially up here, but, since we're talking about it, what's your best advice?
My best advice is to take hydration seriously. And you can do a lot around preparing your body to hydrate. So I collected sweat rates on my adult athletes for years, and we had adult athletes that were 6'5", 6'6", 200 plus pounds, and down to the smaller end. And these taller athletes, these taller, heavier athletes, they would consume massive amounts of liquid during their training runs by carrying handheld water bottles and stopping and filling them pretty often, and taking salt tabs and all that stuff like that, to the point where they could maintain pretty good hydration levels throughout. But it took work. It took. They didn't just come out that first run and say, okay, I'm going to consume 44 ounces of liquid per hour, as some of them were doing. It takes time, and you have to sort of prep and go, okay, can I do like 10 to 12 ounces an hour, and then so on and so forth. So you just have to start and prep for it and be ready for it from that standpoint.
I find that so interesting, because I feel like as cyclists, the hydration thing is just such an obvious thing because we have bottle cages on the bikes. But I find, I'm guilty of this as well. If I'm running under 90 minutes, the odds of me bringing anything other than maybe like a tiny little flask with me are slim to none. But on a bike ride that's an hour, I would definitely bring a bottle.
Absolutely. And, I don't know what it is, if it's a culture thing or if it's just that the handhelds are like their handhelds are not the most comfortable thing to carry along on a run. But, the ultra endurance guys and gals seem to have it figured out. They do the backpacks a lot of the time, or the harnesses a lot of the time. And I think people are coming around to it. I see it more now than I used to when I was, just my sort of anecdotal experience and looking around in Austin, Texas. I see it more now than I used to. And I think people comes with, understanding the value of it and also seeing, gear out there that's a little bit easier to handle.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I first started running, the original Feel Belt was kind of the only game in town, and hated it. I hated it so much.
Oh yeah, it bounced a little bit and stuff like that. And
yeah, and like you're a guy and you say that. Now imagine being a female with like hips and a waist trying to get one of those things to fit. Oh, it was the worst. Like it's evolved so much since then. I'm really happy with it now.
Yeah, and so I hope people just like can kind of get that and appreciate it and go, okay, it doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world. And by the way, you can put like your car keys in it or whatever else, your ID and stuff like that, or gels or whatever. And then if you do it right, like the trick for us was always to put the bottle in the freezer the night before, pull it out so it's like rock solid, and then start to run with it that way. And sort of by the course of the run, it would melt. You would drink whatever was melted, and by the end of a run on a hot day, it was sort of still nice and cool at the end of it.
Oh, I like that. Okay, and then this kind of leads us very nicely into how you ended up at Under Armour. But what about all of those like cooling fabrics and stuff? What's the deal with those?
Yeah, so we've obviously at Under Armour we have a few fabrics that we have in that sort of category, and one of them being like a cool switch material that we launched a couple years ago. And we obviously study them hard internally and try to find if it is actually making impacts on core temperature and stuff like that. And when you're talking about a core temperature level, there's whether you're looking at sort of the classic kind of thresholds for core temperature cutoff, or the more kind of novel ones around these kind of more personalized core temperature cutoffs. 0.5 degrees of core body temperature savings on a Celsius grade is pretty important. And so you can do those things, but at the end of the day, when it's super duper hot outside and stuff like that, you're going to have to also put cold stuff into your body and stuff like that to help manage yourself, and also have your body sort of adapt to that. So it's the combination of factors, I think, is what kind of helps people overall manage that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So you are the lead exercise scientist for Under Armour now. How did you end up there?
So I was coming off of my time at a local run training group called Rogue here in town. And we, during that time, I was the training director, so I oversaw all of our training programs. And it was at a time where we had 40 or so coaches, and we had roughly 3,500 members come through every year. And, during that, it was really fun and really exciting. I loved that sort of like direct opportunity to work with people. And at the end, at sort of the end of my time there, I was excited about like kind of expanding a little bit in the sense of like, how can we interact with more people? And when Under Armour acquired Map My Run, and they sort of were expanding operations here in Austin, came across sort of a position looking for this type of person that has the ability to sort of span and drive training concepts at a scaled level. And I was like, well, that sounds really interesting. And they were looking for somebody with some exercise science background. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting too. I have a little bit of that. So went in and went through the whole process. So it was just sort of serendipitous. It was one of those things where, from a job posting level, you're like reading it, you're like, I feel like they wrote this job for me. And so, that was 2.5 years ago, and I've been with them since, and we're constantly kind of growing out our offerings as exercise professionals within Under Armour, and helping to advance the company and make better products for our consumers.
That's awesome. So what's the most exciting project that you've worked on so far?
So the most exciting thing probably recently is the Under Armour connected footwear. We've been in multiple kind of iterations of that over the last few years, and we feel like this time we got it right, or closer to right. And we always want to do better, of course. But you look across the connection experience to all those other pieces that it takes to get a consumer product right. I feel like we did well, and so we're really excited about it. And it was also put into our new footwear line that's called Hover. It's all, and speaking about the Hover foam specifically, so we have a Phantom model and a Sonic model, and both of those come connected so they can work with Map My Run. And that's what we were a part of, is that connection side and actually validating the data that comes off of that chip. So the speed data, the distance data, the stride length data, and the cadence data that the chip provides. And over a course of many, many months, and lots and lots of testing on a lot of unique individuals, got that got the testing to a pretty good place, or got the data to a pretty good place. And so that was pretty exciting. And then we're kind of going to that next phase of going, okay, now that we have this data, stride length and cadence, like that's cool. A lot of people are familiar with especially cadence. But there's also a lot of runners out there go, okay, I've heard about cadence. My friends talk about cadence. I've seen it on blogs and magazines and stuff. But like, what do I actually strive for? What do I do with that? And so we've been developing a feature that provides tailor-made target ranges for cadence and stride length based on a number of inputs for a particular user. So somebody after their first run in the shoe can actually go on, look at their stats, and they'll see like very clearly, okay, this is my target range, this is what I can go for. And hopefully it sort of gives people, like, demystifies that a little bit and gives them sort of an idea of what to go for.
That's super cool. So correct me if I'm wrong, what the shoe is it has a chip in it, and theoretically by the time that the shoes have worn out, that's about how, like, the lifetime of the chip, give or take?
Right. Yeah. So that was like the really fun thing about the connected shoe experience from our perspective, is we didn't want something that you had to charge. We didn't want something that you had to clip onto a shoe. We wanted something that was just part of the shoe, that you just was always there and you didn't have to mess with or fuss with. And so whether, it's something that you run with your phone or without your phone, that you still get the data from the shoe, and the chip itself inside the shoe, it, like you said, it lasts the life of the shoe, and it's kind of with you across all those runs, and it tracks all your steps and all those pieces. So the thing that, like, I think about and I like about it is the untethered run, is what we kind of call it.
Yes.
Where you just don't have to take your phone with you, don't have to take your watch with you, and you can just go decompress and just run. And as a coach for adult athletes and professional athletes as well, like, we were constantly like fighting the need to be married to the watch, and like, okay, I want you to go out and run 5 miles at an easy effort today. And we'd go out and run 5 miles, and people come back like all winded and tired, be like, what happened? Like, why are you not running easy? And they're like, oh, coach, I started seeing the numbers, and it was like 30, 40 seconds slower than I thought I should have been at. So I was like speeding up, and it's like, no, you're supposed to run easy. And so, like, this is the feature, I think, for the training runner, the athlete actually in a training mode, that they're like trying to manage those easy day stressors, that, you can go out, do the run, get it automatically tracked, maintain the effort, and then come back and still have all the data there that you would expect from it, so you can still analyze your run the same way.
I love that. And I'll say, as someone who's almost like the reverse of that, like, I'm so bad for, like, terrible at recording data. Ask every coach I've ever had, I'll be great at it for like 48 hours. And then I'm just over it. I did an article earlier this year where I actually used my FitnessPal for 30 days. It was the hardest 30 days of my life. It felt like a second full-time job. So having a shoe that's just going to do it for me is pretty excellent.
Yeah, it's nice from that perspective, in that you just can go out, and if you're not a huge data nerd, you still get all your stats that are getting tracked and stuff like that, which I think is really a win at the end of the day. And, down to the simple stuff of like, have I had these shoes for like 300 miles or is it more like 600 miles? Like, they feel a little flat, they feel a little funky, and that end of things, it's like, oh, well, I can just kind of like hop in and see that without having to go in and log that or write it down or whatever that might be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm like a wannabe data nerd the way you're a wannabe bookworm. So I really like this.
If only we could share some of that.
Yeah, right?
Back and forth.
I'm pretty excited about trying out the Hover sneakers. Like I was saying before, I have a pair waiting for me that I'll get to next in a few days that I'm super excited about. So actually, tell me a little bit about just quickly, because I know not everyone is going to want to run out and buy these, but like, what are they like as far as just shoes go? So like forgetting the chip.
Yeah. No, I think that's just from a pure shoe standpoint. The two models, one, the Phantom, is the kind of more softer, what we consider the more luxurious model. It's super squishy. It actually we're an apparel brand historically, and so we spend a lot of time in apparel factories and stuff like that. And we're in a factory doing some stuff and thinking about like bike chamois, and they're seeing bike chamois, and somebody was like, hey, like can we put that in a shoe? And so like the Phantoms actually have like a bike chamois type material in the bottom of the shoe. So instead of the traditional sock liner, it's this like super squish, super comfortable bike chamois. And then on the Sonic side, that's more of the kind of like what we consider like the performance sneaker. It's a 9.5 ounce shoe, really super breathable knit upper, which if you live in Austin or anywhere else, warm climate, and you're looking for like that breathable shoe for the summertime, especially, you get great breathability from it, which I'm a big fan of because my feet sweat like crazy when I'm out running and I'm squishing around. And but the real thing that with the platform that we're excited about is the Hover Foam, which is a new proprietary foam for us that's really soft, great kind of like first step in feel. And so far it's gone well, and we are getting good reviews, and I personally am liking it quite a bit.
That's awesome. I'm super excited about that. Okay, so we keep mentioning Austin, Texas. So I feel like I need you to just like pitch Austin, Texas to everyone listening, because I really I think everyone should live there. I think it's like the best place on earth to be an athlete.
It's a great spot for training, and like we always consider, there's great training hubs around the country, whether it be, Flagstaff, Arizona, or Mammoth, or Boulder, or any of the other like amazing spots out there. But for us, like it works really well because you get nice trainable weather for most of the year, especially in the winter months when you're preparing for those spring races or things like that. You get good training weather. We also have great, trails. We have great kind of like we have this urban path around the middle of our town, around this body of water called Lady Bird Lake, Town Lake if you're old school Austin, and it's this crushed granite, so kind of like this nice soft dirt-like trail that everybody runs on, and great for tempo runs and steady state runs and all that stuff. And we have pretty bikeable roads and good spots for swimming. So if you're a triathlete, I think it's a pretty good spot. And for the runners and the cyclists out there, you can absolutely find plenty of roads and trail to fill your heart's desire.
Yeah, I remember I was there for like 48 hours, and I told you this before. I ended up like skipping half of the things I was supposed to be doing, and ended up like swimming in a quarry that like belongs to a gym somehow.
Oh yeah, that's pretty fun. It's nice, cool water.
That was like the craziest thing. My friend's like, "Oh yeah, come to my gym. I have guest passes." So I go with her, and I'm like, "Oh good, we're gonna swim in the pool that's outside at the gym." She's like, "Oh no, we're gonna go to the quarry lake that the gym also owns right behind it." So
yeah, that's pretty fun.
It was insane. And then I grabbed like a stand-up paddleboard and did some of that. It was the best. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And we have margaritas. We have margaritas and Tex-Mex, which is pretty good too.
I was just going to say, yeah. So for any listener hoping to get like the best tacos and margaritas, what are your best restaurant recommendations? These are the important things.
Putting me on the spot. There's breakfast tacos. As any endurance athlete knows, like that breakfast meal, that post long run or post workout meal is like the best tasting meal of the week, right?
Yes.
And so we choose to indulge in the breakfast taco as our breakfast post workout of choice. And we have some good spots in town: Taco Deli, El Chile. Let's see here. The classic one that everyone goes to that's kind of branched out now is Torchy's Tacos. But they're like really like anywhere you can throw a rock at like 7 a.m. in the morning is going to have pretty good breakfast tacos. So
Yeah.
go park your car, go for a run, go for a swim, whatever that might be, and then just like look around and follow your nose. You'll find some good spots.
Yeah, I remember the first time I got there. I admit I was starving when I got off the plane, and I stopped at a Chipotle on my way to the place I was staying, and I got to their house, and they were just like, "Are you freaking kidding me? You're in Austin, and this is your decision. This is what you're doing." Like, oh
It's
God.
like, stop. We're gonna go make this right now.
I think they might have, to be honest. I think they let me eat like a quarter of it, and then they were like, "Okay, now that you're like not angry anymore, let's go do something good."
Anything, as long as it's wrapped in a tortilla of some sort, like we're like, all right, we're gonna make this good.
Yeah. Okay, so in all of the runners that you've coached like a fair amount of like newer runners. What are the biggest mistakes that you see new runners making?
Yeah, so new runners are like awesome because they're just so excited about it. They started running for a multitude of reasons, and that excitement is like what you have to help new runners kind of like channel into a positive way, right? Because they walk into a store, they walk up to coach or whatever that is, and they're like, I want to go now. And so you have to sort of like spread that energy out over a course of weeks, because like we're with anything new, you have to like form a habit. You have to sort of like get over this initial hump of it, seeming fun and exciting and novel at the beginning to like getting into those lulls. So the first thing with the beginner athlete is like, okay, so like how can we take that energy and spread it out? Like how can we get you to set some goals early on so that you have something you're spread for? How can we prepare you for, okay, this is fun now, in a couple weeks it might not be that much fun, but I'm going to be like there to help you along the way through that. We're just going to get over that hump. So that's like the really first kind of initial stuff. Then the other stuff is kind of broken down into how a new runner sort of gets into running culture and understanding what running culture is. So like just start super simple. Which side of the road do I run on? What do I need to wear when I run? Like, what about my socks? What about my shoes? Like, do I need a water bottle? So all that stuff, like, if you can just help somebody like get comfortable in that, it's because it's sort of like, being a kid and going to a new school. You're like, oh, I don't know anybody. I don't know how this new place works. So helping somebody understand all those things is a huge burden off of people's backs. And the other thing that I always found really interesting with new runners is they want running to be hard. And I don't know why that is. Like, maybe it's because, like running for much of their lives, if they haven't had any exposure for it, maybe it's like punishment for whatever they did, whatever sport they did in high school, So it's like, okay, so running actually shouldn't feel hard unless you have to, so let's try to like find a way to run a pace or a cadence or whatever that might be that works well for you. And so we did like cadence drills all the time with beginner runners, and we would help them find like sort of higher cadence. New runners go out and sort of like run like gazelles, and this is just anecdotal in my experience, but it seemed to hold up pretty well. And so we do cadence drills, and that was actually some of the inspiration for the connected footwear coaching that we provide now, is sort of helping new runners find these running forms that hopefully help people feel like it's a little bit easier while they're out running, and getting them into all that. And so those are sort of like the biggies, right? Like channeling the energy and making sure that you're there for the long tail. And then 2, like helping them understand running culture. And then 3, helping them understand like running doesn't have to feel super duper hard. Because all the other stuff you can help them with. Like, we should start with run walks. Like, that's great. Like, just give me 2 minutes or 3 minutes of running when you go out the door to move your body. Go move your body for 30 minutes and spend 3 minutes or 5 minutes of that time running, and spend the other time just walking. We're going to get there. And if you want to walk up hills, great. Just keep moving. Just keep putting your body forward. And that's really it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I make that mistake honestly over and over again with running. Like I'll read something like Born to Run, and then suddenly I've signed up for like a marathon. True story. Like I've signed up for a marathon that's happening that weekend, despite having like not run over 10 miles in the last 2 years.
Oh yeah, sure, yep.
Yeah, well, I read it in the book that I can run for a really long time, and it's okay. So I was born for this, right?
Yeah. Well, we'd have people walk in, at Rogue all the time and be like, "Hey, like my friend dared me to sign up for this marathon, and it's in 4 weeks. Like, train me for this marathon." We would be like, "Oh man, okay, like let's see about this."
So no.
Yeah, like, can we sit down? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can we talk for a minute?
we need to talk. Oh man. And then, I mean, gear-wise, what do you think the biggest mistake that new runners make is? Because I know it's pretty tempting to just kind of go into the store and just start shoveling things off the shelf. Or on the flip side, if you're not that person, you're the person that is running in the tennis shoes that you've been mowing the lawn with for the last 10 years and figure that's okay.
Yeah, I would say it's the latter is really the biggest thing, is that you'll have people and they'll be like, "Oh, I don't need running shoes. I have athletic shoes." And I've had them for a few years, sure, but I've really actually never run in them before. But I've been walking around in them basically daily for the last few years, so never mind the fact that they probably have 1,000 miles on them. But, they're probably good for running. And so, we would take them through this process of okay, these are your shoes now, try on some of those shoes and get a feel for it. And to just help people kind of understand that, right? That, okay, you don't need a lot of equipment to run, but for the most part, shoes are the most important equipment. But then also, the idea, this is less of, with kind of quote unquote smart fabrics and tech fabrics, more ubiquitous now. But, especially a few years ago, you would have to kind of help people understand that, there are better fabrics out there that, help, when you're out sweating a lot and they're not clinging to you and they're not, rubbing in the wrong spots and all that stuff like that. But, helping people understand gear choices and stuff like that it can be sort of a stress relief in that, okay, I didn't know what I was supposed to wear. I see people running and they're short shorts. Do I have to get that? I feel comfortable in short shorts. No. We have great 7-inch shorts, 9-inch shorts. They have pockets. They look and feel just like your typical shorts. So, all those pieces there are pretty helpful too.
This is going to lead me to my typical rant here. I find it really unfair that guys can wear longer shorts running that they can then go hang out in and not look super weird. But there's not really that equivalent for women, because we really have shorter sporty shorts, and then you can't really wear those to the bar. I mean, you can,
right.
But you look like an idiot. You look like
right.
You just came from the bar from a run. So, that's my, grumpy rant. And, sport skirts, I'm sorry, they are never going to look like normal clothing. You are still just going to look like you were playing tennis or running. So,
someone I think, we could probably, maybe we should all just collectively agree that, joggers and track pants are a good thing for girls and boys, yes. And we'll just all embrace it together and just start wearing those to the bar instead.
Yeah, if we could just do that, that'd be great. I mean, I already do that, I'm not gonna lie. So, thankfully, I live in a mountain town. That's what everyone is wearing to the bar.
That's right. Yeah, that's actually a real bonus. We're yeah, I've got to now.
Yeah, I recently had this conversation with a friend where we were talking about what's what's the smallest thing that's the hill that you're willing to die on, and mine was the leggings are totally acceptable as pants. That's it. That's my thing.
And it's worthwhile too.
Exactly. I will fight somebody. Anyway, okay, so you're also doing a lot with Map My Run, so kind of sell me on that. How does a runner benefit from actually using it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think especially, in context for probably this audience who maybe is used to tracking with, say, sort of a Garmin watch or, something like that. How does it sort of play into that? And I think with a Map My Run and an app like that, you get a few different ways through it. So from like the data visualization, all that stuff like that. But, you have like sort of the backup tracker, and that like your phone, you can leverage the phone app to do the actual GPS tracking. For us, we talk a lot about like the training plans that live in app. So if you're in a place or you don't have access to coach and you're interested in run training plans, but you want something more than like the PDF plan that I download off the internet, we offer training plans in app that are reactive to you. So they change with you as you train, or if you miss workouts, or as you perform better, which we're pretty excited about. And then too, from like the side of, as we're talking about the connected footwear and how they tie into the connected footwear and getting your data there. But three, like, I think when it comes to like having that sort of central hub for how your data is flowing in, because you may use like a one watch brand for a while, and then you might move to this other watch brand, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, like half my data lived on this watch brand, and now half my data lives on this one. Or I'm sure, Molly, you probably test like tons of different products, and so you're like have this like disparate data source. And so we try to be a pretty open API in the sense of like we try to like culminate and bring a lot of different data in. So if you're switching around from source to source, then you can have it all aggregate there. But also, like, if you are just getting into the sport and you just want like that early, easy access point, like a free phone app like Map My Run that tracks your data reliably is like a great thing, because you're like, oh, okay, now I don't have to go make this $200 investment to determine like if I actually like to do this sport or not.
Yes.
And it's also fun for your other tracking. Like, I like to get credit for like going to the gym or mowing my lawn or whatever that might be, because just kind of feels good to see like, oh, okay, I did this amount of time being active or burning this many calories. So I like it from that point too. But back to that data nerd side. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think especially for, a lot of our audience would be like, doing another sport and maybe want to introduce some running. And yeah, that's sort of a low impact way to start tracking that without, going too crazy on the gear side of things. Especially for the people that really want the gear, but like probably might get thrown out of their house if they bring in one more freaking watch. Just an idea. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there, but where can people find you on the interwebs? Oh, and also, what is your favorite piece of Under Armour clothing that you've ever had?
Oh, that is a really good question. So you can definitely hit me up on Twitter, Jeff Knight XSci, EXSCI. Super confusing there.
I'll put that in the show notes because that is very confusing, yes.
Yeah. Let me just try that again. JEFFKNIGHTEXSCI.
Well done.
So hit me up there, or you can of course find me on like LinkedIn and those other spots. But favorite piece of Under Armour apparel, God, that is like a really, really good question. The one I'm most proud of is, of course, our new hover footwear and the connected component of that. But oh man, I dig this one pair of or this one shirt. It's called our streaker shirt, and just like the material, it's like this sort of cottony technical blend. And they did the material in shorts and shirts and stuff like that. Is like, I love that because it's just like super like comfy, but it's not the like screams like technical fabric. Like it doesn't have that shine to it, which I like. I love like if I could like like have sort of something that looked just like a classic T-shirt, but was also like excellent wicking and stuff like that. It would be that. So the streaker is like really, really close to that, which I love. So yeah, that would probably be it.
That one always makes its way into my roundups that I do because it's just so simple. It's pretty it's reasonably priced, and it just looks nice. It's not super trendy. It's not super nerdy. It's kind of just right.
Yeah, you need those classic points because it's like $20-$30 shirts. Like not going to blow anybody away, but you want to you want to feel good. You want to look good when you're going out for a run or a ride or whatever it might be in. And like, I think that's like part of it. Like I get like that confidence when I'm putting on the gear that I feel good in, I'm going to go work out in.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. As always, it was great chatting with you. And now I'm going to have to come to Austin. So
Absolutely. Anytime. Anybody out there, come look me up when you're in town.
Awesome. Thanks again. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. The Consummate Athlete podcast is part of the Wide Angle Podium Network. Supporting Wide Angle Podium gets you access to podcasts like ours and keeps your favorite shows on the air and constantly improving. You also get access to rad bonus content when you donate.
Check out wideanglepodium.com for show information, other Wide Angle Podium podcasts, and to become a donating member with awesome bonuses. You'll help support the Consummate Athlete podcast, and every donation helps us keep improving the quality of the show.
Again, that URL is wideanglepodium.com/donate. Thanks for any support. Thanks so much for tuning into the Consummate Athlete podcast. You can check out my stuff over at theoutdooredit.com or by following me on Instagram and Twitter at Molly J. Herford. And you can check out Peter's coaching, training plans, blogs, all that fun stuff over at smartathlete.ca or by following him on Twitter and Instagram at Peter Glassford. And if you want to support this show and other awesome podcasts, please check out wideanglepodium.com for show info, other podcasts, bonus content, and to become a donating member so you can get all of that rad behind the scenes content and help keep shows like this on the air. And lastly, if you're enjoying this podcast and all the information that we're bringing to you every single week, do us a solid and pop into iTunes to leave us a rating and review. It takes you about 2 seconds. You can do it on your computer, you can do it on your phone, and it really helps us out. Thanks so much, and we will see you next week.